Canada is capping the number of international students it's allowing to study here over the next 2 years. Politicians say students aren't being set up to succeed. In some cases, they say they're being taken advantage of by schools, running into housing challenges, unaffordability challenges, and having a tough time finding a job. These are stories we wanted to hear firsthand, so we were invited to an international student union to chat with recent arrivals about their experiences. When did you first decide to come to Canada?
So I decided to come to Canada in 2018, November. So that's when my semester actually started in the University of Fraser Valley.
What was the transition like? Was it challenging at times?
Yeah, 100%. I did get a culture shock initially. I was not adapting to the weather, the timeline, even like the language I was speaking. So for me, it was a culture shock at first.
I went to Alexander College. It's in Vancouver.
How did you sort of come to choose Alexander College?
So I was in such a young age. I just did my grade 12, which is schooling back in India. And then I decided to move to Canada for a better life. So yeah, that time it was like a lot of international students were coming, and then the Alexander College was the one who provided me with the offer letter.
When you first came to Canada, what was the transition like?
When I just came, and then I didn't even know anyone here. And then it was only in my college that I got to know a few of my friends who were also new, and then we were in first semester. We just decided randomly to, okay, let's like have a basement together, and that was the hardest part. Living with unknown people who you don't even know, and then you're sharing everything. You're sharing your personal room and space because you can't afford much money to have a private room.
Do you have a memory about a really hard moment for you when you were transitioning over here?
So I don't know what to expect in Canada. I have no contact when I arrived. I don't have contact to the school. I have to Google the school, and my phone was not working properly because my phone came from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Being on a bus, there's like multiple bus numbers, so I got lost through that. I was able to find my host family. I thought it was close by to the school, but my school was in downtown. That house is in Marine Drive, so it was quite far. And when I found out that the school kind of like don't have support on how to get MSP, they said, just figure it out. There's Google. There's no support with how to get my SIN number and stuff like that, which bank is beneficial for international students. I found those things out along the way. And the biggest challenge was finding a job.
I was struggling to find a job. Then I met one of my old friend who was already settled here. So he helped me in finding job. And then I also stayed with him in his basement for 2 years. So if I couldn't have that friend here, so my struggle gonna increase more. So that's why we started this organization that every student should have someone here who can take care of them. Being a founder, every month I received a lot of complaints by students that they are not getting work. And even now our hands are standing too because we cannot accommodate such number of students. We are trying our best, but still many students are sitting home getting no work because of rising unemployment. Plus they are also exploited by the private colleges. They are intentionally failing them to get more money, and that making students more depressed. So that's why I think if they could stay at their back home, that would be a much better place for them right now.
The BC government says there's about 175,000 international students here. More than half of them are enrolled in private colleges or universities. The student cap won't apply to existing students, and the province still isn't sure just how many permits it will be able to approve this year. Oftentimes, international students will arrive in Canada only to discover they've been scammed or exploited. So we're going to speak with an immigration consultant who's fighting on their behalf. You mentioned these schools can pop up anywhere. Can they pop up in this area right here?
100%, and you know what? There may be a few in this area. I know in this area there's so many private colleges that are the size of my office.
When you first heard news of that cap, what went through your mind?
Honestly, I don't know how many people will agree with this with me, but I was a little bit of relief because things are not in control right now. In order to get Canada under control, the students are already here. In order to take care of them properly, in order to make sure nothing will get streamlined 100%. Unfortunately, that's going to take years and years and years. For that, just to clean up the mess, sometimes you need to take a step back. Now, I think in the last week, in my email, I have about 8 to 10 colleges that are now selling. Private colleges that want to sell their practice now because they were dependent on these fees coming in and they really didn't have anything to offer.
There's also been a lot of political opposition to the international student cap. The federal NDP says it unfairly blames international students for contributing to Canada's housing crisis. We're going to speak with an MP who says the system has gone unchecked for too long, but penalizing students isn't the answer. In terms of international students and this sort of system of exploitation, how has it been able to kind of operate unchecked for so long?
Well, that's a good question, right? I mean, this is something that's happened for a long time, whether it be liberal governments or conservative governments. Successively, this has happened, and it's gone unchecked, and now it's sort of reached this sort of heightened level to the point that it has. The government needs to do a much better job to make sure that accountability is there and to ensure that protection is there for these international students. I've always said those students who are victims of fraud, they should not be penalized, and they've already suffered enough.
What message do you think this cap has maybe sent or said about international students as it relates to housing?
It is so easy for people just to point fingers and say it's the newcomer's fault. And so the reaction would be to put a cap on and to disallow for people to come to Canada. From my perspective, newcomers are not to blame. Canada wants to attract international students because we want new talents, young talents, to come to Canada to get educated. We hope that they would actually stay in Canada to support our economy, to support our industries. What we need is a partnership, collaboration between the federal government, provincial and territorial governments, and institutions. They need to actually ensure that student housing is being provided for, both for international students as well as domestic students.
Like it or not, changes are coming. Since Ottawa announced the cap, BC introduced its own suite of measures it says will strengthen international education. That includes more oversight of private schools and higher language requirements to study here. Will that improve the educational experience overall? We'll find out over the next 2 years.